Okay, so we're going to be reading this article titled The Knights of Labor, and then we're going to be answering some questions. So, the Knights of Labor. In the 19th century, the Knights of Labor attempted to organize workers of all kinds into a union to improve working hours and conditions for laborers. Overview. Labor unions arose in the 19th century as increasing numbers of Americans took jobs in factories, mines, and mills in the growing industrial economy. The Knights of Labor, founded in 1869, was the first major labor organization in the United States. The Knights organized unskilled and skilled workers, campaigned for an 8-hour workday, and aspired to form a cooperative society in which laborers owned the industries in which they worked. The Knights' membership collapsed following the 1886 Haymarket Square riot in Chicago. By 1886, the American Federation of Labor, an alliance of skilled workers' trade unions, was growing. Modern labor unions arose in the United States in the 1800s as increasing numbers of Americans took jobs in the factories, mines, and mills of the growing industrial economy during the Industrial Revolution. For the first 100 years of its history, the United States had been a nation composed mainly of small farmers. But in 1880, the American economy had shifted to an industry. For the first time in the country's history, more people worked for other people for wages than for themselves as farmers or craftsmen. In these early years of industrial capitalism, government played little to no role in regulating businesses. Monopolies, single entities which control an entire industry, eliminating competition, could set prices for goods and services as high as they liked. Likewise, industries could conspire to keep workers' wages low. Wealthy business owners routinely bribed judges and members of Congress to side with them in disputes. With such enormous resources at their disposal, business owners could easily overpower any individual worker who might complain about his or her mistreatment. Labor unions attempted to reconcile the disparity in resources between large businesses and individual workers in order to improve the condition of workers. Unions are organizations of workers who join together as a group to bargain with the owners of the business that employs them. Unions bargain with owners for higher wages, shorter hours, better working conditions, and union recognition. A union's power lies, in part, in its ability to strike. A strike is when workers refuse to work and prevent others from working in their place if possible. Leaving factories and mills idle and costing businesses valuable production time, unions are valuable to their members because they protect individual workers' jobs and enforce ongoing labor management contracts. Owners, in turn, have a variety of options available to combat strikes. Owners can, for example, fire striking workers and hire new ones, or hire short-term workers for the duration of the strike, known as strike breakers or scabs. The Knights of Labor. The Knights of Labor was founded in 1869. The Knights pressed for the 8-hour workday for laborers, embraced a vision of a society in which workers, not capitalists, would own the industries in which they labored. The Knights also sought to end child and convict labor. That means labor from those in prison. The Knights of Labor was an exceptionally progressive organization for its day. Most early unions restricted membership to skilled workers, those with specialized training in a craft, and to white men. Led by Terence V. Powderly, the Knights welcomed unskilled and semi-skilled and skilled workers into their ranks. Immigrants, African Americans, and women were also welcome as members. In the 1870s and 1880s, the Knights of Labor found support among coal miners in Pennsylvania and among railroad workers following a successful 1885 strike against the Wabash Railroad. By 1886, thanks to a number of successful strikes, the Knights claimed more than 700,000 members nationally. Here we have like an image of the important members of the Knights of Labor. The Haymarket Square riot. On the evening of May 4th, 1886, hundreds of people gathered at a rally in support of the 8-hour workday in Chicago's Haymarket Square. Among them were a number of anarchists, radical socialists who advocated the violent overthrow of the American government. Someone, to this day no one knows who, threw a dynamite bomb, and in the mayhem that followed, 7 Chicago policemen and 4 citizens were killed. In the aftermath, 8 anarchists were charged with preaching incendiary doctrine and sentenced to long prison terms or death, though there was no evidence tying them directly to the bombing. In addition, the public came to associate the Knights with anarchism and violence. Membership in the organization collapsed. Anarchy and violence weren't the only problems the Knights faced. It also proved difficult to organize unskilled workers as owners could easily replace them if they went on strike. Skilled workers whose specialized knowledge they gave them a leg up in bargaining with owners began to believe that their alliance with unskilled laborers was hindering rather than helping their cause. American Federation of Labor. In late 1880s, skilled workers fled the beleaguered Knights of Labor and joined the newly formed American Federation of Labor. The AFL was an umbrella organization that brought together craft unions of skilled workers who organized by individual trade, such as carpenters, stonemasons, and printers. Led by Samuel Gompers, head of the Cigar Makers Union, the AFL focused on higher wages, shorter hours, and better working conditions for its members. By 1900, the AFL had 500,000 members. Despite the agitation of the labor movement, which staged a combined 23,000 strikes between 1881 and 1900, unions made relatively little progress in this era. As of 1900, only 3% of working people belonged to a union. Not until the mid-20th century would organized labor become a significant force in the American economy. And now we have our reading questions and prompt to go along with this reading. Part 1, what do you think? What social and economic consequences accompanied the United States transition from a nation of farmers to a nation of wage laborers? So what were the problems? Think of things like child labor. How did unions in the 19th century shape the labor system and the workplace in the United States? So what kind of things did they advocate for? So why did the Knights of Labor grow so large as an organization? Why did its membership decline? So part 2, what would you do? In 4 or 5 sentences, explain what job you'd probably have in this time period, how you'd feel about it, how you feel about labor unions, and whether you would join a union. So this is all just your opinion and your thoughts.